Thank you. The chair now recognizes Mr. Ivey of Maryland for his 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank all of you all for coming today. Just briefly, I wanted to respond to the comment about legislation sitting on Senator Schumer's desk. With respect to H.R. 2, I think it was clear before it was passed, frankly, as it came through the committee here. Democrats offered amendments, all of which were rejected. Republicans put in poison pill language, especially with respect to not only abortion on some of these bills, but cutting off federal funding to agencies and social support groups like Red Cross, Catholic Church, and the like. So the fact that you sent it over there knowing it was DOA, I think, is not much to praise for the effort. But more importantly, although Speaker Johnson sent all of us home 3 weeks early, the Senate stayed, and the Democrats and Republicans were actually working on bipartisan legislation to try and address the border crisis, working with the White House and, yes, Secretary Mayorkas to try and find an agreement. Meanwhile, the House Republicans, instead of working with that group and joining in those negotiations, did a road trip to Texas for a photo op opportunity to talk about the issues at the border. So if we want to get serious about it, and by the way, President Biden sent supplemental legislation, I think it was in September, for additional funding. No response from the Republican colleagues. So if you can, part of that's one of the minor things addressed in this article behind me, worst Congress ever, that goes to the ineffectiveness of this Congress under the House Republican leadership to get anything done that's critical. We've probably gone through the issues of pending legislation, Israel, Ukraine, FISA, all the things that haven't got done that need to get done. The border's another one. I hope my Republican colleagues will get busy on that. With respect to the actual issue of impeachment from a legal standpoint, I went through the testimony that the generals provided. I only saw 2 paragraphs in all 3 of your testimony with respect to that, and none of it actually spoke to the language in the Constitution with respect to treason, bribery, high crimes, and misdemeanors. And I thought that was interesting. Professor Turley, who is not necessarily my favorite, but Republicans seem to like him. He testifies a lot. In fact, at the opening hearing for the impeachment hearings against Joseph Biden, the Oversight Committee leadership called 3 experts to testify. Turley was one of the 3. And one of the things Turley said, like he's saying here, is that there's no basis for impeachment. His taking this position with respect to Secretary Mayorkas, and the fact that none of the witnesses that have been called today by the Republicans actually have that kind of experience with respect to impeachment and expertise, and I thought was interesting. I'll add this too. You can put it down. We want to add to the record a couple of documents. One is the Turley letter, which I'll offer in a moment. But the second is a letter, an op-ed that was written by Joshua Matz and Norm Eisen, who are former members of the House Judiciary Committee who've actually worked on impeachment hearings before. And they talked about the absence of evidence to support impeachment here. And a couple of respects that I think are important that we go through. One is the issue of maladministration. So the framers, when they put the provision, and they went through different iterations of it, but they ended up with the language they've got, but excluded a term like maladministration so that we wouldn't have impeachment hearings for policy differences. Because, and this is James Madison, if we did that, the Senate could be picking and choosing and throwing out people just on policy disagreements, where really that we should leave that to the president. The president gets to make a selection, pick his cabinet or her cabinet, hopefully one day, and make the decisions on who should be ruling there. The issue here, and that's pointed out in the Eisen letter, and with respect to the group of professors led by Lawrence Tribe and others who point this out, this is just a maladministration dispute. My colleagues over here are talking about the borders run amok and all of that, and I hear that point, but that's just a policy difference. In the testimony that was given, points about bribery, treason, crime, high crimes, and misdemeanors don't seem to have been made. There's no legal violation, there's no criminal act, there's no basis that the framers were looking for to remove a cabinet member from office. That's a very serious step. And by the way, I got a printout of all of the impeachment legislation that my colleagues have put together. I think Ms. Taylor Greene alone just has 8 impeachment resolutions in this Congress. 8. 3, I think, against Secretary Mayorkas. So if we're going to be serious about this, let's try and get to the issues with respect to the actual legal piece. And I apologize, Mr. Chairman, but I'll conclude there. And I look forward to actually having a debate and experts who can speak to this from expertise or scholarship on the issue of the standard for impeachment.
The gentleman yields.